So I talked about the Rockets about a month ago at this point when they got Kenneth Faried. But this is me talking about the team as a whole, because they do still kind of fascinate me in a way with the way this season has gone and the way James Harden has carried them out of the grave. And now they got Chris Paul back and they're going to rely on his health, and they've made a couple of moves to hopefully shore up the rotation with Shumpert, and maybe they'll get Markieff Morris. They missed out on Wesley Matthews and Wayne Ellington. I think both of those guys would have helped. Of course, they got Kenneth Faried as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And no matter what I say in terms of additions, subtractions, because they did lose James Ennis, the number one thing is still Chris Paul's health. If Chris Paul is not that guy, then this team is still kind of screwed. And I should also say, where Houston is right now at the 5th seed, even if they won their round 1 series, they would just lose in round 2 to the Warriors. So their best bet is to either get the 3 seed or actually fall to the 6th seed. Not that they're going to try to do that, but in a way it would actually be good for them. Anyway, Chris Paul's got to be healthy. I think the best way to make that as possible as you can is just play him like 25 minutes a game. Don't bother with the 30-something minutes per night thing. Probably don't even play him on back-to-backs. Maybe don't even play him against bad teams. I mean, you know, that's definitely a slippery slope because anybody can beat anybody in the NBA. But if you're going to pick games for him to not play, that would be ideal. I mean, last year CP played 32 minutes a game. That's probably too much. This season he's up to 32 and a half. If I look at his last few games, I mean, he had a 34-minute game, a 33-minute game. That's probably too high, if I'm being honest. Especially because, you know, one of those was against Phoenix. Did you really need Chris Paul for 33 minutes to beat the Suns? I think not. So, him playing mid-20s, I think that's perfect. Hopefully Chris Paul's down for that. I don't know. Just hoping he is. And as far as Clint Capella's health, I don't know. That guy's like 18 years old. I just assume once he's back, he's back. Plus, it's a thumb injury. I mean, I'm going to assume that once your thumb is recovered, you're pretty much good to go. So, that's, of course, the core 3 of this team. If those 3 are out there and doing their thing, the other, of course, James Harden, then I think this team still has a lot of potential to do really well. I could picture them going on a run down the end of the All-Star break. If Clint Capella, because again, I'm just assuming the moment he's back, he's immediately Clint Capella again. Maybe they get him with 15 games left in the season. I could picture them going nuts for those 15 games. And that could be the difference between them staying right now at the 5th seed or potentially getting a little higher up in the standings. The 3 seed would be tough because that's 4 games and OKC's been rolling lately. But you got to give yourself that chance, you know? Now, if we can get to all the other guys on this team, some of these dudes I'm comfortable with relying on, others not so much. Eric Gordon, I actually still feel pretty good about him. If anything, just because he was pretty decent against the Warriors on a higher usage rate. I know his jump shot has been up and down all season, and lately it's been trailing back downwards. But, I don't know, his confidence, I think, does a lot for them. I could picture him being one of those guys where the regular season goes kind of rough, but then the postseason comes on and he's just knocking down threes like a crazy person. PJ Tucker is solid as ever. Kenneth Faried is overall fine for your backup 5 spot. If he's not looking good, you can go with Nene. I figure between those two, one of them's going to be respectable. And depending on the matchup, one of them may be the better choice than the other one because their games are so different. So that's some nice versatility to have. Austin Rivers has seemed to have fit in as well as you'd think for the Rockets. Not that I am very comfortable with relying on him. I don't know if he can consistently stand off the ball and make shots. I don't know if he can be productive against good defenses who are game planning against him in a series or down the stretch when teams are basically in playoff mode. Shumpert, I would say I'm lukewarm on. I mean, this is his best three-point shooting season that he's having this year for the Kings, or at least the best one in a while. I would hope that he can just stay disciplined, but one problem throughout his career is sometimes he just thinks he's a little better than he actually is. So he'll chuck up some 3 that he shouldn't attempt, or he'll try to go off the dribble when he shouldn't, and to be fair, with this Houston team, you're kind of forced to not do that because it's not like he's going to get the ball anyway. But then that could turn it into that old thing where it's guy doesn't have the ball, not as interested, and all that stuff. I am surprised that they moved Ennis. I don't remember the actual trade, but they essentially chose Iman Shumpert over Ennis, and sure, I mean, Ennis wasn't lighting the world on fire, but I thought he was fine for the expectations, you know? He was shooting really well from the field. He was fine with chilling out in the corner. I mean, I know it was more of a money move than anything, and I guess it gets him a little closer to under the luxury tax, but in terms of the basketball, I do think that was a bit of a loss, because I think having Ennis and Shumpert could have been pretty alright. But, you know, they got Shumpert, so it is what it is. So while all that stuff, all those role players and everything, it doesn't sound amazing, I think, at the end of the day, even if I'm a little optimistic about, like, the Eric Gordons of the world. Assuming that James Harden, not even maintaining this otherworldly run of, like, 30-point games and putting up, like, 45 and 17 like it's nothing, but just still being the James Harden that we know with a healthy Chris Paul and a healthy Capella, I think that team is still really scary, and as long as they don't get the Warriors in round 2, then I think they have a chance of beating any of these teams. Now, of course, I think you could make a case that any team in the West can be a bit of a sleeper team, between Utah's defense becoming really good and Donovan Mitchell turning it on lately, to the Spurs being really good on offense and having Popovich, and the Blazers just doing their thing all the time, and Dame can go nuts for a series. The Lakers, if LeBron gets in. OKC's tough defense, and Paul George playing like a maniac. But there's still something about Houston, and it's probably the fact that against a lot of the teams in the West, they still have the best player. I mean, even with as good as Paul George has been this season, the overwhelming positive that James Harden is on offense, it may still make him the better player, especially because he's not a bad post defender, and just the way the Rockets are able to hide him enough on defense. I mean, Paul George is still certainly the better defensive player, but, you know, the gap between them there I don't think is enough to make up for the fact that Harden's just a maniac on offense. And, I mean, between who are the teams that have a player that's better than James Harden in this run? I mean, it's basically the Lakers, the Warriors, and that's it. So they're definitely going to have a shot against anybody.